Billionaire comes home early and can't believe what he sees. The front door clicked shut behind him. Daniel adjusted his tie as he stepped into the house, his polished shoes echoing against the marble floor. He had returned from his business trip 3 days earlier than expected. The meetings had drained him. Boardroom debates, forced smiles, endless arguments over money and power. He craved silence, the kind of silence only his vast mansion could provide. But the silence wasn't there. From the kitchen drifted an unfamiliar sound, soft murmurs, the babble of children, small noises that did not belong in his world. Daniel's brows knitted together. He had no children. He paid enough staff to ensure his home remained pristine and quiet. Irritation tightened his chest as he strode forward, his footsteps quickening. What he saw stopped him cold. Elena, his maid, stood by the counter, her blue uniform slightly wrinkled from hours of work. Her yellow gloves were damp, her hands moving methodically as she scrubbed the surface. But it wasn't her cleaning that caught Daniel's eye. It was the grey sling strapped around her chest. Nestled against her were 2 small babies, pale-haired toddlers with wide, searching eyes. Their tiny fists clutched her uniform as if she were their lifeline. Daniel's jaw clenched, fury surging through him. "What the hell is this?" His voice thundered across the room. Elena froze. She turned slowly, her weary face braced for the storm. "Sir, you weren't supposed to be back yet." "That's your first thought," Daniel snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut. "Not an explanation, but an excuse. You turned my house into a daycare. Who are they? Why are they here?" The babies stirred uneasily at his tone, their soft whimpers breaking the air. Instinctively, Eleanor rocked them gently, whispering words in Spanish to calm them. Her eyes remained steady, though her body carried exhaustion. "They are my sister's children," she said quietly. Daniel blinked in disbelief. "So what? That makes them yours now? Since when do I pay you to bring children into my home?" "They are not usually here," Elena said quickly, her voice trembling under the weight of his anger. "Only for the past 3 days." Daniel stepped closer, his shadow falling across her. "And that makes it better. 3 days of breaking the rules, 3 days of lying to me. Do you realize how serious this is?" Elena tightened her hold on the sling. "Their mother is gone. Their father, gone too. They have no one but me and my mother. She has been caring for them since the funeral, but she is old, sir. Too old. Last week she fell. Her body can no longer carry them. I had no choice." Daniel's lip curled with disdain. "Not my problem. You should have found another solution. A neighbor. A shelter. Anything but this." Her voice cracked, though her resolve held. "Do you know what happens to babies in those places? They disappear into a system that doesn't care. My mother begged me not to. She said, 'Elena, you keep them close. You don't let strangers take them.' So I brought them here. I thought, maybe you wouldn't notice." Daniel's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. "You thought wrong." Daniel's eyes narrowed as he studied Elena. He had hired her for her discipline and silence, not for this kind of disobedience. To find his mansion turned into a refuge for children, it felt like betrayal. "You've been working under my roof while hiding them," he said, his voice low but cutting. "Do you know what that looks like to me, to my reputation?" Eleanor lifted her chin slightly, though her arms clutched the sling protectively. "Reputation," she repeated, her tone soft but edged with disbelief. "You're worried about your image while I'm worried about keeping them alive. Sir, with respect, that's a luxury I don't have." Daniel slammed his palm against the counter, making one of the babies whimper. He lowered his voice, deliberate and sharp. "Don't twist this. You broke my trust. You deceived me." Her breathing quickened, but her eyes didn't falter. "Yes," she admitted, her voice trembling but firm. "I broke your trust, but I didn't break my promise to my sister. When she was dying, I swore to her I would keep them safe. So if you want to fire me, then fire me. But I will not abandon them." The words pierced the room like a blade. For a moment, Daniel stood frozen, fury boiling in his chest. He wanted to dismiss her on the spot, to remind her who had the power here, Yet something about the way she stood, tired, desperate, but unyielding, shifted the atmosphere. He looked at the children. One tiny hand had slipped free of the sling, curling aimlessly in the air. The innocence of that small gesture pressed against his anger. "You expect me to overlook this?" His tone was cold, but not as sharp as before. "You think I built everything I have by letting people bend the rules?" "No," Elena answered softly, though her throat tightened. "You built it by making decisions when others were too afraid. And this is my decision. I will not abandon them." Daniel's lips twitched with frustration. He wanted to argue, to throw her words back at her. But the conviction in her eyes held him still. "You lied to me," he said again, though quieter now. "I didn't lie," she corrected. "I hid them. Yes, that is betrayal. But it was only 3 days, sir. Before that, my mother did everything. She fed them, rocked them, prayed over them. But her strength is gone. I couldn't let her collapse under the weight of 2 babies. Her voice cracked on the last words. For the first time, Daniel noticed her trembling hands, the exhaustion etched into her face. She wasn't just a maid in uniform. She was a woman carrying more than anyone should. Daniel rubbed his jaw, pacing a step. "So what now?" he asked harshly. "Do you expect me to run a mansion around your family drama? To let you carry babies while scrubbing my house?" Elena straightened her back, her voice steady despite the tears threatening her eyes. "I expect nothing, sir. Do what you want. Fire me, replace me, erase me from this house. But at least I will leave with my dignity intact, because I didn't walk away from them." Her words lingered in the air, heavier than Daniel wanted to admit. The kitchen fell into a tense silence. Daniel pressed his palms to the counter, his breath heavy, his sharp gaze fixed on Elena. He was not a man used to being challenged, certainly not by his maid. In his world, obedience was expected, defiance punished. Yet here she stood, trembling but unbroken, her entire being wrapped around 2 children who were not even hers by birth. One of the babies fussed, a soft cry escaping into the room. Elena instinctively rocked them, her voice dropping to a gentle murmur. "Shh. Tranquilo, cariño. Everything's all right." Her Spanish whispers filled the air with warmth that contrasted against the steel of Daniel's anger. For the first time in years, something unsettled him. Not the boardroom rivals who schemed behind his back, not the endless chase for power, but the sight of a woman who, despite grief and poverty, refused to surrender. "You should have told me from the start," Daniel finally muttered. His voice carried less fury now, though it still held authority. Elena's eyes glistened. "I know. I was afraid. Afraid you would see me as weak. Afraid you'd toss me out with nothing. I couldn't risk losing everything in a single moment." Daniel paced, his footsteps echoing against the floor. He wanted to maintain control, to remind her of boundaries. Yet, the image of those children, fragile, innocent, clung to his thoughts. "If you want me gone," Elena said quietly, bracing herself, "say it. I'll pack tonight." The words slipped out of Daniel before he could stop them. "I'm not firing you." Elena's head jerked up, disbelief flickering in her eyes. "What? You heard me," he said firmly. "You made a mistake, yes, a big one. But I've seen men with millions in their pockets who wouldn't lift a finger for anyone else. And you." He gestured at the sling across her chest. "You carry 2 babies while scrubbing my house. That kind of strength, that kind of loyalty is rare." Tears welled in Elena's eyes, though she forced her chin high. "So, what happens now?" Daniel's gaze shifted to the babies again. Their small faces turned toward him, eyes wide and trusting. For the first time in a long time, something tugged at him, something human, something he thought he had buried beneath years of ambition. "Now," he said slowly, "we set boundaries. They don't come here again unless I allow it. But your mother, she needs help, real help. Doctors, medication, maybe even a nurse. I'll make sure she gets it." Elena's lips parted, stunned. You would do that?" He nodded once. "Not for them. For you. Because you've proven something most people never do, that some promises are worth breaking rules for." Her knees weakened, but she steadied herself, clutching the babies tighter. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel turned away, his face unreadable, though the steel in his posture had shifted. As he left the kitchen, Elena leaned against the counter, tears spilling freely at last. The babies nestled closer, their tiny breaths warm against her chest. For the first time in years, Daniel felt a weight he hadn't expected. Responsibility, not for his empire, but for something far more fragile. Daniel didn't sleep much that night. He lay in his king-sized bed staring at the ceiling, his thoughts circling back to the scene in the kitchen. Elena's defiance, the trembling in her voice, the way those small children clung to her, it all replayed in his mind. He had built his empire on discipline, rules, and control, but what he had witnessed was something beyond rules, raw survival, the kind that money couldn't buy. In the quiet darkness, Daniel remembered his own childhood, a past he rarely allowed himself to think about. His father had been ruthless, demanding perfection. Weakness was punished, not forgiven. Daniel had grown up believing that success meant shutting out emotions, that wealth meant safety. And yet here was Elena with nothing but her willpower, fighting harder for those babies than he had ever fought for himself. The next morning, Daniel entered the kitchen again. Elena stood at the counter, her uniform neat but her face pale with exhaustion. The babies weren't there. She had left them with her mother. Still, the tension hung thick in the air as she straightened at the sound of his footsteps. "Sir," she said quietly, keeping her eyes low. Daniel studied her for a long moment before speaking. "I've arranged for a doctor to visit your mother tomorrow, and a nurse will come twice a week to help with the children." Her head shot up, shock flashing in her eyes. You really did that?" "I keep my word," he replied simply, though his tone carried its usual authority. "But don't mistake this for softness. I don't want children in this house again unless I give permission." Eleanor nodded quickly. "Yes, sir, I understand." But her voice trembled with something more than obedience. It was gratitude. For the first time since her sister's death, she felt a sliver of relief. Someone powerful had stepped in, even if reluctantly. Daniel poured himself coffee, the silence stretching between them. Finally, he asked, almost against his own will, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Elena hesitated. "Because I thought you wouldn't care. I thought you would see them as burdens, and I couldn't risk losing my job. If I lost that, I'd lose the only steady ground I had left." Daniel sipped his coffee, his eyes narrowing slightly. "And yet you risked everything by bringing them here." "Yes," she said firmly, "because promises matter. When my sister held my hand before she died, she made me swear I'd protect them. I couldn't turn away, not even if it cost me everything." Her words stirred something in him, something he couldn't quite name. Loyalty, sacrifice, love. Things he had once dismissed as weaknesses now pressed against his carefully constructed armor. He set his cup down with a sharp clink. "You're reckless, Elena, but you're not weak." The word surprised even him. Elena blinked, her lips parting slightly, as if she hadn't expected anything but criticism. And for the first time since he had returned, Daniel realized this situation wasn't just about broken rules. It was about choices, hers and now his. The following week brought changes Daniel had not anticipated. True to his word, a doctor visited Elena's mother, prescribing treatments that eased her pain. A nurse arrived with gentle hands and patient smiles, lifting some of the burden Elena had carried alone. For the first time in weeks, Elena could breathe without fear of collapsing under the weight of responsibility. Yet Daniel remained restless. He told himself it was business as usual, meetings, investments, negotiations. But every evening when he returned home, he found his thoughts wandering back to the babies. He remembered their tiny hand reaching out from the sling, their fragile cries, their innocent eyes. He would never admit it aloud, but the memory softened something in him he thought long dead. One evening, he returned earlier than usual. As he stepped inside, faint laughter drifted down the hall, It was Elena. She was in the servants' quarters, the babies with her. Though he had told her not to bring them into his house again, tonight he didn't storm in with anger. Instead, curiosity pulled him closer. He stopped outside the doorway. Through the small crack, he saw Elena seated on the floor, the babies in her lap. Her hair was loose from its bun, her uniform rumpled from the day. She tickled one baby's chin, earning a giggle, while the other clutched her finger tightly. Elena's laughter filled the room, a sound Daniel had never heard from her before. It startled him, how human she seemed in that moment. Not the quiet, disciplined maid who scrubbed his counters, but a woman carrying love so fiercely it spilled out in every gesture. Without realizing it, Daniel stepped inside. Elena froze, startled, her laughter dying instantly. She scrambled to her feet, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Sir, I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd be back so soon." Daniel raised a hand to silence her. He wasn't angry. Instead, he found himself studying the children. One of them stared at him with wide, unblinking eyes. The other reached toward him, a tiny hand opening and closing. For reasons he couldn't explain, Daniel crouched down. Slowly, he extended a finger. The baby grasped it, holding on with surprising strength. Something stirred in Daniel's chest, an ache, unfamiliar and unsettling. "They're stronger than they look," he muttered, almost to himself. Eleanor's eyes softened, though she stayed cautious. "Yes, they are." Daniel cleared his throat, straightening abruptly as if embarrassed by his own lapse. "You should have told me the truth from the beginning, but I see now. You weren't just protecting them, you were protecting yourself too." Her lips trembled. "I couldn't risk losing everything. If I lost this job, I'd lose the roof over our heads, and then what would I have left to give them?" Daniel said nothing for a moment. Then, quietly, he admitted, "Most people would have given up. You didn't." Eleanor blinked, startled by the almost kindness in his tone, and for the first time Daniel realized he wasn't just tolerating her presence anymore. He was beginning to understand it. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the mansion no longer felt the same. Daniel still demanded perfection, polished floors, order in every room, precision in every task. But beneath the surface, something was shifting. His eyes lingered a little longer when Elena spoke. His tone, though sharp, carried a weight different from before. He had begun to see her not merely as a maid, but as someone with unshakable resolve. The children, though mostly kept away, occasionally crossed his path. Each time Daniel found himself caught off guard. Their innocent stares unsettled him, not with annoyance, but with something gentler, something he had not allowed himself to feel in years. They had no idea who he was, no interest in his wealth or power. To them, he was just another face in their small, fragile world. One evening, Daniel returned home after a particularly grueling meeting. Deals had soured, tempers had flared, and yet none of it weighed on him the way it once had. As he entered, he heard faint humming from the garden. Curiosity tugged at him. There, under the fading light, Eleanor sat on a wooden bench with the babies. She cradled one in her arms, while the other toddled unsteadily on the grass, clinging to her skirt for balance. Her voice carried softly through the air, a lullaby Daniel didn't recognize but felt in his chest all the same. He stood quietly, watching. For the first time in years, he felt his mansion was not just a fortress of silence, but a place where life breathed. Elena noticed him eventually, her song fading as she straightened. "Sir, I didn't mean to disturb you." Daniel shook his head slowly. "You didn't." The toddler, wobbling on unsure legs, stumbled forward, straight into Daniel's direction. Before he could react, the little one reached for his pant leg, steadying himself against it. Daniel froze, staring down at the child clinging to him without fear. Elena's eyes widened. I'm sorry, he doesn't—" But Daniel surprised them both. He bent down, carefully placing a hand on the boy's back to keep him steady. "He's stronger than he looks," Daniel murmured, echoing the words he had spoken once before. Elena's lips parted, her expression caught between shock and gratitude. For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the child's babbling. Then Daniel straightened, his gaze meeting hers. "You forced me to see something I forgot a long time ago." Her brows furrowed. "And what is that, sir?" "That wealth isn't measured in dollars," he said quietly. "It's measured in the lives we choose not to walk away from." Elena's breath caught. Tears brimmed in her eyes. But this time, they weren't from exhaustion. They were from hope. Daniel turned back toward the house, his expression unreadable but lighter somehow. Elena gathered the babies close, her heart pounding with relief. For the first time since her sister's death, she felt safe. And for the first time in his life, Daniel realized that perhaps power wasn't just about control. It was about responsibility, about the choices that define who we truly are. And as the night settled over the mansion, both of them knew this story was only the beginning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments where in the world are you watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching. Yes.